I'd been terminated before, years ago when I was young and replaceable. Back then it was messy and loud. Security, a box, a walk of shame. This time it was quiet. So quiet it felt wrong. It happened on a Tuesday morning in December, right after our year-end reporting sprint. The office was half empty, half on flex, and everyone who was in looked like they'd been sleeping in their hoodies. I'd been up since 5:30, running through a final reconciliation for a client billing audit, something our VP had promised would be clean by the end of the week. At 8:11 a.m., my phone buzzed. Subject: Employment Status Update. For half a second, my brain tried to make it harmless. Benefits, open enrollment, some generic HR blast. Then I opened it. It wasn't long. No greeting, no warmth. Just corporate cold. Effective immediately, your employment with the company is terminated. Your access will be disabled. Instructions for returning company property will follow. No meeting invite. No calendar hold. No please join HR. No severance packet. No attachments. And then I looked at the top of the email. To me, CC, blank. I stared at that empty CC line like it was a typo that would fix itself if I blinked hard enough. Because at my level, senior operations manager, client-facing access to internal financial controls, terminations do not happen like that. They just don't. HR is always looped in. Legal is always looped in. At minimum, someone from People Ops is there to read the script and document that you didn't threaten anybody on the way out. But this email was just my manager, his name, his signature, his little motivational quote at the bottom that always made my skin crawl. Ownership is everything. Ownership, I felt my pulse in my throat. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it. I didn't do anything emotional because I've learned that the first person to act emotional loses. Instead, I did what I always do when something doesn't make sense. I started checking the parts people forget exist. First, I took a screenshot, then another with the timestamp visible. Then I took photos of the screen with my phone, because screenshots can disappear on managed devices, and I've seen it happen. Second, I opened the email header. Most people don't even know that's a thing, but years ago I sat through enough security training and enough internal investigations to understand that the truth usually lives in the boring metadata. The header told me where it was sent from, how it was routed, what system authenticated it, and that's where my stomach tightened. It wasn't sent from a corporate HR tool. It wasn't sent through our standard termination workflow. No ticket reference, no automated footer, none of the internal tags those systems usually add. It was sent like a normal email from his account. And what caught my eye even more was the timestamp embedded in the header trail. 6:12 a.m., 2 hours before my manager was even supposed to be online. My manager, Kyle, was the kind of guy who posted rise and grind nonsense on LinkedIn, but never logged in before 9:30. He liked to stroll into the office with a smoothie and a story about how busy he was. So why was he sending the termination email at 6:12? And why, if this was legitimate, wasn't HR copied? I sat perfectly still for a moment, listening to the office around me. Keyboards, a printer, someone laughing too loudly near the coffee station like they were trying to convince themselves they were fine. I minimized the email and looked at my calendar. At 10:00 a.m., I had a call scheduled with one of our biggest clients. Not the friendly kind. The kind that asks questions that can become subpoenas if you answer wrong. Kyle wasn't on that call. HR wasn't on that call. Legal wasn't on that call. I was on that call. And if I was truly terminated effective immediately, then someone, somewhere, had just created a very expensive problem. I tested my access carefully. Slack still worked. VPN still connected. My badge app still showed active. That's when I understood what was happening. This wasn't a termination. This was an attempt. Kyle had sent an email to make it feel official, hoping I'd panic, pack up, and disappear, without anyone else noticing how he did it. Because if HR had been copied, HR would have asked the obvious questions. Where's the separation packet? Where's the documented performance plan? Where's the approval trail? Why is this happening today? Why is the only person assigned to the client audit suddenly gone? And if legal had been copied, legal would have asked the question that ends careers. What risk are we trying to avoid here? I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling tiles. Kyle and I had been tense for months, not loud tense, the kind of tension that sits in the room like static. He didn't like that I kept receipts. He didn't like that I asked for approvals in writing. He didn't like that I insisted on process. He liked control. And I had something he didn't: visibility. A month earlier, I'd flagged an inconsistency in a year-end adjustment. Nothing dramatic, just a line item that didn't reconcile. I'd asked Kyle a simple question in a shared channel. Do we have documentation for this reclassification? I'm not seeing the approval. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and told me to trust him. I didn't. I escalated it the correct way, quietly, professionally through the audit tracker. 2 days later, Kyle stopped inviting me to meetings. He started forgetting to include me on threads. He began talking to me like I was a problem he needed to manage. Now this email showed up, sent before sunrise with nobody CC'd. I opened a blank note and wrote down exactly what I knew, like a case file. Termination notice sent from Kyle's email. No HR, no legal, no payroll copied. Not sent via HR workflow tool. Timestamp suggests early morning. Send my access still active. Client audit call at 10 a.m. assigned to me. Then I did one more thing. I searched my inbox for Kyle and HR together. Nothing. No chain. No prep. No documentation. No, we're letting him go. No approvals. Just silence. And in corporate life, silence usually means one of two things. Either the decision is so routine nobody thinks twice, or someone is doing something they don't want recorded. My screen went dark for a second as a notification popped up. A new email. From Kyle. Subject: Employment status update. My heart didn't race this time. It slowed. I opened it. One sentence. If you attempt to access any systems after this email, it will be considered unauthorized activity. No CC again. No HR again. No legal again. Just Kyle, trying to scare me into vanishing. And that was the moment I stopped feeling confused and started feeling something else. Because he wasn't just firing me. He was building the narrative. And if I didn't act smart, he'd make me the villain in my own exit. My phone buzzed again, this time a Slack message from IT operations. Hey, quick question. Are you trying to log in from home? Kyle says you're locked out, but we still see you active. I stared at that message until the words stopped looking like words. Kyle was already calling people. He was already telling a story. And I hadn't even responded yet. I typed one sentence back, very carefully. No, I'm at my desk, and I was never formally notified by HR. Then I watched the typing bubble appear and disappear and appear again, because whoever was on the other side suddenly realized something Kyle hadn't thought through. If HR wasn't involved, then Kyle wasn't authorized to do any of this. And if Kyle wasn't authorized, what else had he been doing without authorization? That's when my laptop chimed. Calendar reminder. 10 a.m. client audit call. And in the invite details, someone had just added a new attendee. Legal counsel unannounced. No message. No explanation, just added. I stared at the name. And I understood. The company had just noticed. Not because Kyle confessed. Because Kyle made a mistake he couldn't unsend. And in less than 2 hours, I was going to find out whether they were stepping in to protect me or stepping in to protect themselves. At 9:57 a.m., I joined the audit call 3 minutes early, like I always did, because being late in front of a client is the kind of small thing that gets written down and reused later. My camera was off. My mic was muted. I watched the participant list like it was a court docket. The client side showed up first. 2 finance leads and their external auditor. Then one of our sales directors, already sweating through his polite smile. Then, exactly at 10 SAS, The name I'd never seen on any client call before. Maya Patel, Corporate Counsel Legal. No heads up. No, hey, I'm joining for support. Just there. A minute later, Kyle joined. And the second his name appeared, I felt this calm, ugly clarity in my chest. Because Kyle didn't sound surprised at all. He spoke like he owned the room. Morning, everyone, he said, too cheerful. Before we start, just flagging that I'll be handling this call. There were some staffing changes this morning. Staffing changes. Like I was a printer they replaced. I stayed muted. The client auditor asked the first question, and it wasn't even aggressive. It was procedural. Can you confirm who had approval authority on the reclassification entries in Q4? We're matching to the audit trail. Kyle answered instantly. I can. Those were standard operational adjustments. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was reckless. Operational adjustments. That phrase is what people say when they don't want to name an approver. And the auditor wasn't asking for a vibe. They were asking for a name. Maya, corporate counsel, didn't speak yet. Just listen. Kyle kept going. And for context, he added, the employee who managed those records is no longer with the company. So we'll need some flexibility on the documentation turnaround. There it was. He had said it out loud on a recorded call in front of legal. I was no longer with the company, but I was still here, still active, still hearing him try to erase me in real time. I could feel my jaw tighten. I wanted to unmute and correct him, but I didn't, because I knew what he was trying to do. If the client accepted that I was gone, Kyle could control the narrative. He could discover missing documents later. He could claim he inherited a mess. He could blame everything on a fired employee who couldn't defend himself. And what made it worse was how normal he sounded doing it. Like he'd rehearsed. The auditor didn't let him off. We'll need the audit trail, she said, and we'll need to know who authorized the journal entries. If the person who prepared them is gone, the approval chain becomes even more important. Kyle hesitated, just a fraction. Then he said, I approve them. I sat up. That was not true. Kyle didn't approve entries. He didn't have the delegated authority for those thresholds. He could review them, sure. He could comment, sure. But formal approval at those amounts had to go through finance controls. There were policy documents about it, trainings, mandatory attestations. Kyle was telling the auditor he approved something he wasn't allowed to approve. And Maya finally spoke, calm as ice. Kyle, can we pause for one moment? He chuckled like it was casual. Sure, what's up? Maya didn't match his tone. I'd like you to clarify your last statement. You said you approved those entries. Are you referring to operational review or formal approval under finance policy? Silence. Just a beat. A long one. Kyle tried to laugh it off. I reviewed them and... Maya cut in gently but firmly. I need precise language on a client audit call. I watched Kyle's face on camera for the first time. Tight smile, eyes slightly wider than normal. The I'm fine look people get right before they aren't. The auditor was still waiting. Kyle finally said, operational review. Maya didn't say thank you. She just said, understood. And that one word told me everything. Legal had just marked him. The client asked for specific documentation. Kyle promised follow-up. The call ended with forced professionalism and obvious tension. The moment the client disconnected, Kyle didn't sign off. Neither did Maya. Instead, Kyle spoke directly into the dead space. Okay, he said, voice dropping. So Maya, we'll need to coordinate internally. I've already terminated his access. Maya didn't respond right away. Then she asked a question that sounded simple, but wasn't. Who is his, Kyle? Kyle blinked like he didn't expect to be challenged. Him, he said, irritated. My operations manager, the one who handled the audit prep. I sent the email this morning. Maya's tone stayed measured. Did HR send the separation notice? Kyle's jaw worked. I sent it, he repeated. I'm the manager. I can terminate my direct report. Maya paused. No, she said calmly. You can recommend termination. You cannot execute separation unilaterally without HR workflow and documentation. Did you have HR approval? Kyle's smile was gone now. I didn't need it, he snapped. This is my team. Maya didn't flinch. Kyle, I am going to ask you again. Did HR approve this separation? Kyle looked off screen for a second like he wanted someone to rescue him. Then he said quieter, Not yet. There it was, not yet, meaning he did it first and expected the company to clean it up afterward. And suddenly the thing that made the least sense that morning made perfect sense. No HR, no legal, no CC. Because if he didn't copy them, he could move fast and force their hand. Maya spoke again. Is he currently on the call? Kyle's eyes flicked around, and for a split second, I swear he forgot I could hear all of this. Then he said, No. I didn't move. I didn't breathe loud. I stayed muted, camera off, like I didn't exist. Maya said, Kyle, I see his name still listed as a participant. Kyle froze. I watched the moment he realized. He leaned toward his screen, scanning, and then his eyes snapped up, right into the camera, like he was looking directly through it. For the first time since this started, he sounded rattled. Hey, he said, forcing casual. If you're on, you can drop. This is an internal conversation. I stayed silent, because the second I spoke, he'd twist it into unauthorized access like he threatened in his email. Maya didn't let him steer. Kyle, she said, stop. If he's still connected, that's not unauthorized access. That means IT has not disabled his credentials, which means he has not been formally separated. Kyle swallowed. Maya continued, still calm, but now sharper. And if you told the client he's no longer with the company without HR confirmation, that's a misrepresentation. Kyle's face flushed. It's not misrepresentation, he snapped. He's done. I made the decision. Maya replied, That's not how employment law works, and it's not how corporate governance works either. Kyle's hand was shaking slightly as he moved his mouse. I could tell because the cursor darted across his screen when he tried to click something. Then, another sound. A new participant joined the call. Angela Morris, HR business partner. Kyle exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for an hour. Angela, he said quickly, too quickly. Thanks for joining. This is about... Angela interrupted him. No, she said, her voice clipped. This is about why you sent a termination email without HR and without a documented cause code. Kyle opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Angela continued. And why payroll is asking why an off-cycle access termination request came from you at 6:12 a.m. Kyle's throat bobbed, because now he wasn't controlling the narrative anymore. Now he was being questioned. And I realized something that made my skin prickle. If payroll noticed, it meant Kyle didn't just send an email. He tried to trigger systems. He tried to push me out of the company infrastructure before anyone could stop him. Angela asked, Where's the separation packet? Kyle said, I'll put it together. Angela replied, That's not how this works. You don't terminate and then build justification. Then she said the sentence that finally turned my irritation into something colder. Kyle, what is the real reason you did this today? Kyle leaned back, jaw tight, and for a split second his mask slipped. Not anger, fear. Because whatever his real reason was, he knew it didn't sound good out loud. And in that moment, I understood. This wasn't just a bad manager abusing power. This was a manager trying to make sure I couldn't speak before something else surfaced. And that was just the beginning. By the time Angela from HR joined that call, I wasn't angry anymore. Anger is loud. It makes you careless. What I felt instead was something uglier, like I'd stepped into a room mid-argument and realized everyone had been talking about me for weeks. Angela didn't waste time. Kyle, she said, end the call, now. We're moving this to an internal meeting. Kyle tried to keep his voice steady. Fine, but he needs to disconnect first. Maya, legal, cut in. No, you end the call, and nobody is accusing anyone of unauthorized access until IT confirms actual separation. I watched Kyle's cursor flick like he was trying to find a button that would make the whole morning disappear. Then the screen went blank. A second later, my phone rang. "Unknown number," I answered. "This is Angela Morris, HRBP," she said. "Are you at your desk?" "Yes." "Don't leave," she said. "Don't message anyone, don't forward anything. I'm coming to you with IT. Her tone wasn't threatening. It was controlled, like she was keeping a lid on something that wanted to boil over. "Angela," I said, "am I terminated?" There was a pause. "No," she said, "not through any approved process." That sentence hit me like cold water, because it meant the obvious thing I'd been avoiding thinking. Kyle hadn't made a decision. Kyle had gone rogue. I sat there with my hands flat on the desk, breathing slowly while the office kept moving around me like nothing was happening. Someone heated soup in the microwave. Someone laughed at a meme. My world had split open and nobody noticed. 2 minutes later, my Slack disconnected. Then my email started spinning. Then the VPN icon went red. Finally, not because Kyle's email had power, because HR and IT were now controlling the switch. IT showed up first, a guy named Marco I'd only ever seen in passing, and a woman from security operations named Denise. Angela followed right behind them with Maya on speakerphone. Angela didn't sit. She stood beside my desk, like she didn't want to contaminate the moment with comfort. "First," she said, "we're placing you on paid administrative leave while we sort this out." Paid administrative leave, not termination. That was the first tiny moment of relief I'd had all morning. Then she added, "Second, your access is being suspended for preservation, not discipline." "Do you understand the difference?" "I do," I said, "and I appreciate you saying it clearly." Denise from Security Ops nodded like she'd been waiting for me to act like an adult. Marco opened his laptop, pulled up a ticketing screen, and started reading. "Kyle submitted an urgent deprovision request," Marco said. At 6:08 a.m., he marked it security concern. Angela's jaw tightened. Security concern? Marco scrolled. He wrote, "Employee is attempting unauthorized access after decision. Immediate removal required." I didn't speak. I just stared at the words on Marco's screen. Kyle hadn't just tried to fire me quietly. He'd tried to label me as a threat. Denise looked at me. "Did you attempt to log in from home this morning?" "No," I said. "I was at my desk. The only logins were me." Marco clicked another tab. "That matches the logs. Your SSO session originated from the office network. No remote sign-in attempts. No data exfil alerts. No abnormal downloads." Angela exhaled like she'd been holding air in her chest since sunrise. Then Maya's voice came through the speaker, calm and clipped. "Angela, confirm. HR did not authorize separation, correct?" "Correct," Angela said. "There is no approved action, no cause code, no documentation, no separation packet." Maya replied, "Then we treat Kyle's email as an unauthorized communication. Preservation protocol applies." Denise turned her laptop toward Angela. "We also need to note he told a client auditor that he approved entries he isn't authorized to approve." Angela blinked. "On a recorded client call?" "Yes," Denise said. Legal was present. There was a silence that felt heavy in my ears. Then Angela looked at me and asked very carefully, "Why would Kyle do this today?" I almost answered with the easy explanation. Because he's a bad manager. Because he's insecure. Because he hates being questioned. But the more serious the room got, the more I understood this wasn't about personality. People don't risk HR, legal, and security for ego. They do it when they're trying to get ahead of something. "I don't know for sure," I said. But it started after I flagged a year-end reclassification that didn't reconcile. I asked for documentation. Kyle told me to trust him. Angela held my gaze. "When?" "A month ago," I said. "I logged it in the audit tracker." Maya's voice sharpened slightly. "What specifically did you flag?" I swallowed. "A reclass that moved costs out of an operational bucket and into a client program bucket," I said. "It made the quarter look cleaner. I asked for approval evidence." I never got it. Marco paused his typing. Denise's expression changed, less neutral, more focused. Angela said, "Do you still have access to that tracker?" "No," I said, "but I documented it. I have my notes." Angela nodded once. "Good. Do not email them. Do not forward them. Write down everything you remember. Time, date, who you spoke to, what was said." I reached into my drawer and pulled out a notebook, the one I used for meetings, task lists, reminders. It wasn't dramatic. It was normal, and that's what made it terrifying. The line between normal and ruin was one email with a blank CC line. Denise spoke up. "We'll also need your company laptop and badge. Standard procedure." I handed them over without hesitating, not because I trusted them blindly, because I understood the game now. If Kyle wanted to paint me as a rogue employee, the worst thing I could do was act like I had something to hide. Marco closed my laptop and placed it in a tamper-evident bag like I was evidence in my own life. Then Angela said, "We're moving you to a conference room. We'll take a statement." As we walked, I noticed Kyle standing across the floor near the glass offices. He was pretending to type on his phone, but his eyes tracked me the whole way. Not smug, not angry, worried. That's when I realized something that made my stomach drop all over again. Kyle didn't panic when HR joined. He panicked when legal joined, meaning he didn't fear an HR complaint. He feared a paper trail. In the conference room, Angela slid a legal pad toward me. "Start from the beginning," she said. "Exact time you received the email. Exact words. Any prior conflicts." I took a breath and started writing. And somewhere between the timestamps and the quotes, a picture formed that I didn't want to see. Kyle didn't send that email to fire me. He sent it to silence me, because at 10 a.m., on that audit call, I would have answered the auditor's question the honest way. I would have named the real approvers. I would have said, "Kyle reviewed it," but approval didn't come through finance controls. And that would have forced the company to look at the reclassification trail, at Kyle, at whatever he'd moved, at whoever benefited. Angela's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and went still. Then she looked up at me. "Internal audit just opened a formal case," she said, "and legal has issued a preservation notice." She hesitated like she didn't want to say the next part out loud. "They're asking if you can identify any other entries Kyle touched, especially anything tied to year-end comp adjustments." Year-end comp. Bonuses. I felt my throat tighten because suddenly the timing wasn't just suspicious, it was obvious. This wasn't about my job. This was about money. And Kyle had tried to erase the one person who might connect the dots. Angela pushed her chair back. "We'll continue after lunch. Do not leave the building without telling security." Then she added almost quietly, "And I need you to understand this. You're not the one under review right now." I nodded, but my hands were still shaking, not from fear for myself, from the realization that the company hadn't just noticed. They had found something, and if they'd found something big enough to trigger internal audit within an hour, then whatever Kyle was trying to hide wasn't small. It was the kind of thing that makes people desperate, and desperate people don't stop when they fail the first time. The next 2 hours didn't feel like work. They felt like a controlled fire in a building that had been dry for months. Angela kept me in a small conference room with the blinds half closed, like they didn't want people to see there was a problem. Denise from Security Ops stayed nearby, not hovering, just present enough that nobody could say I wandered. My phone buzzed with one message after another. Co-workers texting, "Are you okay? Did you quit?" Kyle said you got walked out. Kyle was already spreading it. Not just that I was gone, why I was gone. I didn't answer anyone. Angela had been clear. No messages, no side conversations, no accidental evidence gaps. So I sat there and wrote my timeline like a deposition. 8:11, termination email received. 8:12, screenshot. 8:13, header review. 9:57, audit call joined. 10:01, Kyle says I'm no longer employed. 10:04, legal challenges his wording. 10:10, HR joins and questions why there's no workflow. Every time I wrote a timestamp, I felt my confidence come back. Not because I was enjoying it, but because reality was staying consistent. Kyle's story wasn't. At 12:38, Angela returned with Maya still on speakerphone. Internal audit wants you to walk them through the reclassification you flagged, Angela said, but they're not asking for opinions. They want facts. I nodded. Facts are all I have. They brought in 2 people from internal audit, both calm, both polite, both with the kind of eyes that don't miss details. One of them introduced himself as Tom. The other was a woman named Rena. Rena placed a printed screenshot on the table. It was Kyle's urgent deprovision request. Reason: security concern narrative. Employee is attempting unauthorized access after decision. Immediate removal required. Rena looked at me. Did you ever attempt access after receiving the email? I didn't get defensive. I didn't do the emotional thing. No, I said. I was already logged in at the office. I didn't leave my seat. I didn't try to remote in. IT can confirm the origin IP. Tom nodded once. They already did. He flipped to another page. This one showed authentication logs, timestamps, session origins, device fingerprints. It was clean, boring, truthful. Tom said, Kyle's claim doesn't align with the data. That should have felt like victory. Instead, it made my stomach twist. Because if Kyle lied about something that easy to verify, he either didn't understand how logs worked, or he was so desperate he didn't care. Rena slid another page forward. A transcript snippet from the client call, time-stamped. Kyle's statement about me being no longer with the company. Then Maya's correction. Then Kyle's retreat to operational review. Rena said, this call is under legal hold now. I felt my throat tighten. So the client, Maya's voice came through the phone, clipped. The client will be informed that an internal control review is underway. They will not be told names. They will be told process. In other words, damage control. Angela leaned in. Now, the reclassification. I took a breath and explained it the way I'd explain it to any competent professional. A year-end reclass moved costs from one internal bucket into a client program bucket. It improved quarterly optics. It also shifted which pool those costs hit, something that mattered for performance metrics, and indirectly bonuses. I flagged it because I couldn't find a complete approval trail. Rena didn't react. She just asked, where did you flag it? In the audit tracker, I said, with a note requesting documentation. I referenced the entry ID and date. Tom asked, who had edit rights on that tracker? A small group, I said. Me, Kyle, finance controls, and audit. Tom's pen stopped for half a second. Kyle had edit rights. Yes, Rena asked. Did your note remain visible? It did for a while, I said. I can't verify now. My access is suspended. Maya's voice came through again. We can verify through system history. That was the first time all day I felt something close to satisfaction. Because system history doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about Kyle's tone. It either shows he changed something, or it doesn't. Angela's phone buzzed. She checked it, then looked at Denise. Is Kyle in the building? Denise answered immediately. Yes. Angela stood. We're doing this now. They left me alone for exactly 7 minutes. I know because I counted. 7 minutes of silence in a corporate building feels like an alarm you can't hear. Then Denise came back, eyes sharper than before. Kyle's access has been suspended, she said. My chest tightened. For how long? Denise didn't smile. Until further notice. Angela returned a minute later. Her face was controlled, but there was something in her posture that said the day had shifted again. Kyle has been placed on administrative leave, she said. He's not managing anyone effective immediately. I didn't react. I didn't celebrate. But inside, something broke loose. Quiet, hot relief. Not because I wanted him humiliated, but because he couldn't touch the narrative anymore. Angela added, "He denied sending the termination email." I blinked. "Denied?" Maya's voice cut through the speaker, flat. "He's now claiming his account was used without his knowledge." I stared at the table. "That's not—" Tom raised a hand gently. "We know. Authentication records show his device, his MFA, his location." Rena added, "And his ticket submission came from his workstation." Kyle had tried to pivot to the oldest move in the book. It wasn't me. Someone else used my credentials. Except the company I worked for logged everything like a paranoia hobby. Angela exhaled and finally let a little emotion slip into her voice. "He also claimed you threatened him last week." That hit harder than I expected. "Threatened him?" I repeated. Angela nodded. Verbally, "He's trying to build cause after the fact." My hands went cold, not because I was afraid they'd believe him, but because it confirmed what I'd sensed from the beginning. Kyle wasn't just reckless. He was constructing a frame. And if he was willing to accuse me of threats, he'd accuse me of anything. Maya's voice stayed steady. "This is why preservation matters. There is now a documented pattern. Unauthorized separation notice, false security concern, misrepresentation on a client audit call, and retroactive allegation creation." Tom looked at me. "Do you have any written communication from Kyle about trusting him on the reclass?" "I do," I said. "Not on my company device, but on my phone." He replied in a channel with a thumbs up and said, "Trust me." Rena nodded. "We can pull Slack logs. Don't send it. Don't screenshot it. We'll retrieve it through iDiscovery." Angela's eyes locked on mine. "I need you to stay clean. No hero moves. No private investigations. Let the process do its job." I nodded. "I'm not trying to win. I'm trying to survive." Angela's expression softened slightly, then hardened again. "One more thing," she said. "Payroll confirmed there were off-cycle changes submitted against your profile this morning. Not pay, not benefits. Access and status codes." Status codes. That meant Kyle didn't just send an email and hope. He tried to change the system record so the email would look true after the fact. Maya's voice lowered. "And those status codes interact with year-end compensation controls. That's why internal audit escalated so quickly." I sat back, the air leaving my lungs. This wasn't a personal feud anymore. This was a governance event, a real one. Denise stepped in and said, "Security is escorting Kyle out." I didn't ask to see it. I didn't want the movie moment. But I heard it anyway. Muffled voices in the hallway, the kind that try to sound normal and fail. Then the soft click of the conference room door shutting again. Angela looked at me. "I'm sending you a formal notice," she said. "It will state you are on paid leave and that the termination email was not authorized by HR." That was the first piece of paper that mattered. Because if Kyle tried to tell anyone I'd been fired for cause, I'd have an official contradiction. Angela paused at the door. "We're not done," she said. "Not even close." Then she added, quieter, like she didn't want the building to hear it. "But you're not the one they're chasing." And for the first time all day, I allowed myself one thought. Sharp, calm, undeniable. They tried to erase me with an email no one else could see. Now the entire company could see them. By the next morning, the building felt different. Not louder, not busier, just cautious. Like everyone could sense something had happened upstairs, even if they didn't know what. I didn't go in. At 8:03 a.m., I received an email from Angela, sent through the official HR system this time. Proper headers, case number, distribution list, to me, CC, HR shared mailbox, corporate counsel, security, ops. That CC line alone felt like oxygen. The message was short and clean. "You are placed on paid administrative leave pending an internal review. The termination email you received on December was not authorized by HR and is not valid. Do not perform any work or access systems unless directed in writing by HR." No drama, no emotional language, just reality, documented. And for the first time since yesterday, I slept for more than 2 hours at a time. At 11:20 a.m., Maya called me, not on speaker, not through a conference room, just a direct call. "I want to be very clear," she said. "You're not being investigated. You're a reporting witness." "Understood," I replied. She paused, then asked, "Do you know what Kyle's real role was in year-end comp allocations?" I didn't guess. I didn't speculate. "I know he had visibility," I said. "He had edit rights to the operational performance dashboards. He could see how metrics translated to bonus pools." Maya gave a single, quiet, "okay." Then, "That's consistent." She didn't say more, but she didn't need to, because consistent meant they'd already found something. Later that afternoon, Angela scheduled a formal interview, remote, recorded with internal audit present. When I joined, Tom and Rena were there again. This time they weren't asking me to remember. They were showing me what they had recovered. Tom shared his screen, a version history log, a sequence of edits in the audit tracker. My original note, flagging the reclassification and requesting approval documentation, was there. Then 2 days later, it had been edited, not deleted, edited. The wording softened. The request for documentation was removed. The entire tone changed from needs evidence to FYI. And the edit author, Kyle. Tom didn't say got him. He didn't need to. Rena flipped to the next file, a workflow submission log from payroll systems, status codes, and timing. At 6:08 a.m., Kyle submitted the urgent deprovision ticket. At 6:10, he attempted to change my employee status from active to separated, voluntary. Voluntary, like I quit. The request was rejected automatically because only HR can finalize it, but the attempt was logged. Then at 6:12, he sent the termination email. And finally, at 6:19, he tried a second status change. Separated, involuntary. Rejected again. 2 rejections, 2 attempts. Logged, time-stamped. The system had stopped him and recorded him doing it. Tom said, "This is why your CC line was blank. There is no HR approval trail." My hands were steady now, not because it was pleasant, because the fog was gone. I asked, "So what was he trying to accomplish?" Maya answered from her square on the call. He was trying to create the appearance of a legitimate separation before the audit call. If you were gone, you couldn't contradict his statements, and he could control the approval narrative. Rena added, "And he attempted to label you as a security concern to justify the speed." I felt my jaw tighten again, but this time it wasn't helpless anger. It was disgust, because it was calculated, not messy, not emotional, just calculated. Angela looked at me and said, "There's one more thing we need you to hear." She held up a document, redacted, but not enough to miss the shape of it. "A preliminary finding," she said. "Kyle manipulated operational metrics tied to year-end incentives, not just yours, across multiple teams." I didn't interrupt. Angela continued. "Those metrics fed into bonus pool allocation. He created a scenario where certain pools were inflated and others were reduced. The pattern benefits a small group," Rena added, "including him." There it was, the real motive, not my attitude, not my performance, not a culture fit, money. And the reason he chose that morning wasn't random. It was the audit call. It was the risk of exposure. It was the last clean moment to make me disappear and replace the truth with his version. Maya's voice stayed flat, but I could hear the finality in it. Kyle's employment has been terminated for cause. Just like that. A sentence that didn't need theatrical flair, because the weight was in what it implied. His access was gone, his authority gone, and his story dead. A week later, I returned to the office, not triumphantly, not with a speech, just back. My access was restored in stages. Security walked me through it. IT documented everything. HR did it all through official workflows. They didn't just fix it. They made sure it could never happen to someone else the way it happened to me. On my first day back, Angela met me in a small meeting room with a folder. Inside was a signed letter. Confirming my employment remained active. Confirming the termination email was unauthorized. Confirming I suffered no disciplinary action. Confirming my compensation and bonus eligibility were preserved. And then one more page, a reassignment notice, new reporting line. Kyle's role had been eliminated, and his functions were split. My name was listed as interim owner of the operational controls process until a permanent structure was set. Angela slid the folder toward me. "This isn't a reward," she said. "It's a correction. You were right to ask for documentation. You were right to keep it professional, and you were right not to panic." I didn't smile, but something unclenched inside me, because the thing that scared me most that morning wasn't being fired. It was being erased, being turned into a rumor, a security concern, a story someone else wrote. Now the company's official record said what actually happened. Kyle tried to fire me without HR. He tried to falsify my separation status. He tried to mislead a client audit. He tried to rewrite documentation to hide approvals. And the system history proved it. A month later, I saw Kyle's name again, only once. In a compliance memo that went company-wide, unauthorized employment actions and misuse of access termination requests will result in immediate separation. No name mentioned, no public shaming, just a rule written in the language corporations use when they've been burned. That afternoon, I opened my email and looked at the CC line on a normal message. HR, legal audit, all looped in on a process update. And I realized something simple and satisfying. Kyle tried to destroy me with an email nobody else could see. But in the end, the most powerful thing wasn't revenge. It was documentation. Because the truth doesn't need a loud voice. It just needs a record. And now I had one.